Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining me today, he's an author, a keynote speaker, the host of the Bucket List podcast, the founder and CEO of the Bucket List Coach, and known as the Bucket List Guy. It's Trav Bell. How are you doing today, Trav?
Hey, Alex. Stoked to be on the show, mate. Hi from Australia, everybody.
I'm excited to hear all about your Rise to the Challenge. So what we like to do first is talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
Yeah, I'm here in a place called Ocean Grove, which is about an hour and a half out of Melbourne, here in which is the lower part of Australia, if anyone's been there before. And I'm from the future. So it's, I think it's Tuesday here. It's Monday where you are. Growing up, I grew up basically down here in Ocean Grove, moved away for 20 years and then come back down here about 5 or 6 years ago. Because the ocean, I'm a surfer, so I love surfing, grew up surfing, surf lifesaving, swimming, pretty much as a jock, a jock, as you say in America, my whole life. And so for the first 20 years of my life, I was involved in the personal fitness training industry, and one of the first to franchise personal training in Australia back in the early kind of 90s, and then got out of that and got into what I'm doing now.
When you were growing up and you found surfing, was that like the first thing that you found, or did you kind of have to get comfortable with it?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's when you grow up on the beach, it becomes a little bit more natural to undertake that, and just understand the ocean. And my dad was a good surfer and surf lifesaver, like a lifeguard as well. So it kind of came natural that I was hanging around the beach as what we call a nipper, which is a grommet, which is a young surf lifesaver. And so just growing up like that was more of a natural probably for most, and my affinity with the ocean has been, I guess, quite natural.
When you're surfing, what's the hardest thing that challenged you about it?
Big waves and nearly drowning, I've been chased out of the water by sharks. There's some big sharks down here. But yeah, and then you got competition. I'm not getting any younger as well, so trying to compete against all the young crew that I used to be one of back in the day. But they're kind of the biggest challenges. But trying to get a big but an intuitive wave that's really critical and take off on time, and trying to get the ultimate in surfing is trying to get barreled, get a wave that goes over your head and you look through the tube of it. So trying to get that is probably the most challenging thing, but that's it's the most challenging, but it's also the ride of your life on the other side.
I mean, we see in the movies all the time where they have those perfect waves, like you mentioned, and it's like when you do it in real life, it's like, where is this? Like, where's that thrill? I mean, because you mentioned sharks. I'm like, if I see a shark, I'm done. Like, nope, get me out of the water. But that's for me. I'm a Midwest guy, so we don't have oceans. So I'm not used to that life. Even though I say, yeah, I want to live by the water and all that, but then it's like, nope, keep me away from that area.
Well, you get some strange critters and animals where you are too, I guess. So we just, I mean, where I'm looking out at the ocean right now, I'm 500 meters away from it. I can check the surf as we speak, and it's just yeah. I guess a surfer always knows that you're going into their territory. It's not the other way around, and they have right away, not you. You're the foreign object. So that's just an understanding. And see, most surfers who do get attacked by sharks or do have an encounter, they understand, they're back out there. It's like, well, it's not their fault.
Did you have any motivations or inspirations growing up, someone that you looked up to?
That's a good question. Yeah, my swimming coach was pretty was pretty significant in my life growing up, and he instilled he exposed me to personal development, things like visualization, psychology, really early on when I was, from the age of 12. And, from what I do now is those principles, I guess, that were taught to me, they're imprinted in me early on, have carried through. And I've really had to draw on them, during different challenges in my life. And at the end of the day, it's funny, given what I do now, it's, I really was a sponge early on in my life.
Talk about those challenges that you went through. What's something that you had to find in yourself to overcome those obstacles?
Well, it's not so much. I guess different challenges, because I've been through, a mild. When I say I went through a depression, but it was quite mild compared to what I've heard with other people. And for me, it was, always having to concentrate or focus in on my why, being persistent, determined, being abundantly minded rather than scarcity minded, getting around good people, positive people, getting rid of negative influences in your own ecosystem, making the hard decisions, what to say yes to, what to say no to. These are all things that kind of guide us in the right way, right? And things that we learn, people that we hang around with, the events that we go to, the books that we read, all have a positive influence. Coaches, mentors, etc., as well, all have a positive influence. And I think it's important, especially if you're in business too. The hardest thing about business is the fact that, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and, my advice to any entrepreneur or anyone starting a business is be prepared to be punched 6 times and get up on the 7th, and at the end of the day, that's why a lot of small business owners fail. And the statistics are crazy, but it really is a persistence game, a determination game, concentrating on your vision, your mission kind of game as well. So I've had to rely on a heap of different resources over the years to get me through challenges. It's been, every day there seems to be one, but right now we're in a pretty good spot.
You mentioned a great point about kind of keeping those negative influences out of your life. I know from my experience during this pandemic, I had to really do a self-reflection in a way where I had to think, what's important to me? And who are those important people? Who are the people that are making sure I'm doing okay? And sometimes you have to make those sacrifices where I'm not getting rid of a person in my life. It's just we're taking a break in a way. And maybe we just can't talk to each other every day. And sometimes we can not talk for 3 months and we just pick up the conversation right away. But it's kind of what's important to me right now. And there's been a lot of changes with friendships because this is the perfect time to see who are those true friends, or even with family.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think what COVID has really shown, and I was just having this conversation, Alex, with a friend of mine last week. I think what COVID has really shown is the tide has gone out on people, and it's exposed people. Mm-hmm. Some people have really bought into the whole conspiracy theory, and look, true or false, whatever, but don't make every single post on Facebook and Instagram and everything else be about conspiracy theory. Get over it, mate. Get it on. You're obviously not busy enough doing positive things out there that you have to concentrate on the negative. So that's taught me a lot about some people. It's really been interesting. And like you just said, I've culled some people, I've defriended people, because we've got the ability, we've got this ability a lot of people don't realize is to control our inputs. when this whole thing broke, I was watching the news like I kind of am now, to look at your president and go, is he going to live? Is he going to stay with us? You know, old Donald. You know, and you find yourself watching. I found myself watching the news when there's this break, and you'd look at, you know, daily death tolls, and you'd look at, you know, the local cases and all this sort of thing, and just you know, watching and then worrying about it. And you'd start your day and then you'd finish your day like that. It's like, no wonder we're all depressed, right? And so I found myself getting a little bit too interested, too obsessed by what was going on, and then going, you know what? And then getting really pissed off, but then realizing, hey, dickhead, you don't have to watch that TV. You don't have to listen to the news. You don't have to hang around those people. You don't have to, you know, go to their story on social media. You don't have to buy into it. You can control your inputs. Now, whether it's COVID or whether it's the broader picture of negative inputs that just don't add to you and where you're going, you know, that power is really within all of us, that we can make those decisions like today and start to control those inputs to be more positive, more life affirming, and more reinforcing to where we're going, right? And so for me, I've done a big stock take, and probably like yourself, over the last few months, that's for sure.
I think social media has played a big part in, like, we talk about mindset on the show a lot, and how we have to keep a positive mindset to keep ourselves going. And you mentioned with negative impacts and inputs, it kind of deteriorates what direction you're going, because now you were on this path, but now you just took a left turn. And definitely with social media, everything, you see the same posts all the time that's coming up. And I've kind of had to say, I got to take a break. Like, shorten the amount of time that I'm using social media and try to be positive and do things that are going to make me do better today. And so it's not like I'm blocking out everything. It's just, I'm not going to try to consume everything that people are trying to tell me, because that's where people are trying to say, no, you should think this way. No, you should think that way. And it's like, we're our own people. Like, that's the part where we have to continue going and keep that positive.
It's a real thing. Just before COVID-19 broke, I was due to do a talk on, because I talk a lot about mental health in relation to bucket lists, and, you know, bucket list is obviously the filter or the lens that I talk everything through, but really bucket list is the foundation of it, is about positive psychology. And positive psychology is the science of happiness, essentially, how to help people find more meaning, more purpose, more fulfillment, more gratitude in their life. Just do it with this kind of cool bucket list brand over the top of it. I was due to do a talk at one of the local universities to 600-700 PhD students, and it was actually about this thing called the loneliness epidemic. The loneliness epidemic, it's actually a thing. And we know what a pandemic is, and we know how serious a pandemic is now. That's obvious. But an epidemic is creeping up there. And it's called the loneliness epidemic. Google it. It's a real thing. It's the adverse effect of social media, and the adverse effect that social media is actually having on people. Because really, we live in a world now, sadly, where we're all comparing our behind the scenes footage with someone else's highlights reel. And we'd like to think that we're all connected, but we're actually disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting. You know, when was the last time you picked up a phone and actually talked to someone? You know, we're just doing that less and less. And instead of meeting someone and catching up on how things, you already know what's going on with that person's life. And when you do catch up, everyone's doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, we are really disconnected, even though we think we're connected. And you know, the stats don't lie on this loneliness epidemic. It's massive.
I totally agree. What was that dream job that you were wanting growing up? What was that specific occupation?
I do it.
Oh, so you wanted
I,
to be an entrepreneur and all that.
Mate, Alex, you read it out at the start. I literally run around the world doing my bucket list. I have for the last 10 years. I run around the world as the bucket list guy doing my bucket list, and then people pay me lots of money per hour to go into their conferences and or events and talk about my bucket list. And I hopefully inspire others to go out there and live their bucket list before they get given a use by date themselves. So I get all my bucket list is a tax deduction and has been for the last 10 years. And I get to run around doing stupid shit. And there's always a story to tell, and people pay me to talk about those stories.
I mean, that sounds like a fun job. Like you're completing your bucket list, but then you're helping.
Well, it's not a job, mate. No, it's not a job. It's a when I do say it out loud to people, you know, I'm on flights or whatever, they go, what do you do? Look, my parents still don't understand what I do, but you know, now as I guess that kind of I guess to help people compartmentalize what I do. I'm a professional speaker. I'm a coach, and I'm also an author, and I'm also an entrepreneur. So now we've got certified bucket list coaches teaching my intellectual property and the way I do programs in 22 countries around the world as well. So I've got a team, a global team that runs that business for me. So I'm the founder of that, CEO of that, and but they're doing a lot of the running around, looking after our coaches. So our coaches are now doing our programs out there in the world in different languages and different currencies, and helping people that I'd never get to in my lifetime. So the cool thing is we've had the ability to scale the message to an even broader group of people around the world, which is really cool.
So were you able to go to college or university and pursue something to help build that kind of mentality for your career path?
No, I did a phys ed degree. So I did human move or exercise physiologist, I guess by trade. So that led me on to do personal fitness training. Or like I said before, one of the first personal trainers kind of running around Melbourne here in Australia. And that led me to, that was a good footing. This is pre-internet. So this is, early days. And then in the sort of mid 90s, I started personal training down here in Melbourne.
Was there not?
That was the learnings, I guess, the foundation for doing that.
You mentioned that you were kind of one of the first personal trainers running around doing it. Was it just not a concept at that time, or was it like a brand new thing? And you said pre-internet, so there wasn't a way to get it out there.
No, it was just the personal fitness train. There was gyms, but the personal fitness training industry wasn't actually that evolved. It had been evolved in America for quite some years, Canada, UK to a certain extent, and Australia caught on in the sort of mid 90s. Personal training only really started in the 80s, late 80s in America, and then sort of 90s it started as an industry. And I guess I was one of the pioneers here in Australia doing that.
What did you enjoy the most about personal training?
Helping people.
So helping them,
and their psychology. No, I've always said, like, we did nearly 2 million personal training sessions, tens of thousands of clients and their families. Nearly 300 personal trainers working for me under that brand, and I loved helping people, but more importantly, with their psychology, and that's why I do what I do now. Is I was always been interested in psychology. If I wasn't doing what I do now, talk about dream job, I'd be. Look, I might go into it later on. Who knows? But I was always interested in psychology, and always fascinated with it and how the mind worked. And you asked about dream job before, and I just remembered that one of my dream jobs would be a professional surfer. I'd love to be a professional surfer. I've got this thing called ability getting in my way. But at the end of the day, psychology is why I love personal training. I mean, at the end of the day, 95% of people would come in and say exactly the same thing in terms of their results. I'm going to lose weight, tone up. It's like, oh shit, haven't heard that before. Yeah, but it's the psychology that actually gets you results. I mean, people know, they know what to eat. They know what not to eat. They know what exercise to do. They know what exercise not to do to keep safe. But whether they do all that or not is a different thing. So that's why we've got to put them in a headlock, kick their ass, but people don't. A lot of people just don't have that in-house ability, and they need to outsource that accountability, that inspiration, motivation, and that's why coaches, that's why personal trainers all exist. I mean, it's the same with every area of your life. Most people know exactly what to do to get results, but their psychology holds them back. So, if you have to get a coach, if you have to get a mentor, if you have to get around people to mirror, then fair enough. So, pay to play.
I think you mentioned it's a lot of people say that they know what to do, but then it's more of the effort to actually go and do it. Because I've been guilty of that before, where I have this all planned out, and then if one day I'm off, it just goes downhill, because it's like my mind is not focused on the task at hand, and I kind of realized that I have to get it together in a way, and I've been making progress, but I feel much better about myself. It kind of gives me, I can do anything now. And so it's definitely one of those things. Accountability is the hardest part of the process. Coming up with the game plan is easy.
Yes and no, because your actions are a result of your belief systems. Your belief systems are a result of your identity. And if you've got a particular kind of identity, a construct around how you see health and fitness, or how you see money, or how you see business, or whatever, you've got a certain identity around that, and that's been formed, during your childhood, during your teenage years, and that stuff is, a lot of that stuff is unconscious, and you don't know why you're not doing the things that you know you should be doing, but we self-sabotage, we comfort eat, we go back to these shitty habits, and a lot of people aren't conscious of why they're doing what they're doing, or they're not conscious of the decisions that they're making, and really the reasons why they're making those decisions in the first place. Why do I always, I get results, and then I somehow self-sabotage, and I come back to my default patterning? Why do I always do that? Why do I make a lot of money, and then somehow it just slips through my fingers, and I go back to scrounging around and scarcity kind of mindset? Why does that always happen? Why, and why do I go into, I get a great relationship, and then I screw it up somehow, and I go back to this stupid me again? What? So a lot of people struggle to break through that threshold of comfortability or knowing for themselves, and to go to the next level. And that a lot of that is belief patterning, belief system patterning. So, and that stuff's that formed pretty early on. Can you change it? You can change everything. Definitely, you can change every bit of psychology in you if you want to. But there's a process and a way to do that.
During that time of building your brand, what was the most challenging thing you had to do in building the brand and getting it to where you wanted it to be?
Well, when someone actually called me the bucket list guy, and after after I got out of personal training, I got into, I put on a talk, and then I packaged in all the stuff that I'd learned from all the personal development courses that I'd learned, been going to, and all my entrepreneurial history. I put on a talk, nearly had to pay the 40 people to come to that talk. And I started sharing my list to do before I die. I always had one written down since I was 18. A lot of people didn't know that about me. And so I started sharing this list, and it really inspired people. And then someone at the end of it said, Trav, how's this list to do before you die stuff? It's pumped everyone up. Everyone's really excited by it. It's like a bucket list. You're like the bucket list guy. And then that night I went home and registered the bucketlistguy.com with no idea how I was going to monetize that brand, but it just felt congruent, right? So the hardest thing was actually, like, being a serial entrepreneur is where to focus my attention. That was one of the hardest challenges, and what to say no to, what to say yes to. But when I registered the bucketlistguy.com, I was also on Google, and I'm like searching for the world's #1 expert, who's like the Mac Daddy, who's like the thought leader in this. Oh, look, no one. So I literally called myself the world's #1 bucket list expert, and it's stuck ever since, and no one's challenged me. So you got to stake your claim, or throw yourself in the deep water and learn how to swim, right? So to answer your question, it's putting on those big shoes and then walking in those big shoes, and having a reverse engineering that brand has probably been the hardest thing. And how do I go beyond Australia? How do I go into America and do this? How do I go into other areas around the world? And you've got, we all suffer to a certain degree of imposter syndrome, but I've got no one else to blame but myself, because I called myself the world's #1 bucket list expert, and I've been reverse engineering that ever since. So that's been a hard part of my brand journey. But, at the end of the day, it's 10 years later, a bunch of different countries, TEDx talk, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I'm the world's #1 by what I do, but stuff it, I'm too old to really care what other people think these days.
Were you coming up with the bucket list brand while you were owning the fitness studio and the fitness training program, or this came
after?
So how did you know that you were ready for a change?
Because I'd been through a pretty sad patch in terms of my depression, and a lot of things came on top of me: relationship, business. Love the end product of personal training, but I lost passion for that industry and for my businesses. And like, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I thought, no, I've got to make a change. And I had, it was around the same time that the world was fully going online. Tim Ferriss, if you know Tim Ferriss, had just come out with his book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And I read that at a really poignant time. I'm thinking, God, I'd love, like, I had all these big commercial leases and this sort of thing. I'd love to just get rid of all of that and work online. That would be, that would be free to me. That would be absolutely awesome. And now it's just a given. That's what we kind of do these days. But, that was a real polarizing thought pattern. I was really indifferent to the norm, and here's this. And this is where the whole digital nomad sort of scene kind of spawned from Tim Ferriss and a few others, Chris Gillaboo, and people working online, like working from a laptop wherever they are in the world. It was a really foreign concept, and I'm thinking, God, I'd love to just travel around the world and go from Wi-Fi hotspot to Wi-Fi hotspot and do this. And so I just made it my mission to go after that goal, and the Bucket List Guy brand fitted in perfectly with that. So, and we've been doing that ever since.
So was there like a small period of time where you kind of had to stick back and kind of reevaluate what was next for you, make sure you were on track?
I just travel. I made an executive decision to just sell off all my gems, got them to rebrand, and then just said I'm out. And someone like, yeah, someone like, no, don't go. But I just had to do what made me happy. And I just sort of had it. So I made the decision, and it was scary, but at the end of the day, you got to back yourself, and that's the strength of an entrepreneur. You've got to back yourself, right?
Yeah. When you are going to do like a keynote speaking event or a TED talk, what's your mission, and what kind of message are you trying to give the listeners that are there?
Well, if you watch my TED talk, it's called Life's Too Short by me, Trav Bell, and it's about helping people wake up before they get given a use-by date. Real simple. It's like I come into rooms and I give everyone a virtual cancer diagnosis and tell them that life's way too short and time is running out. And if they're thinking about doing and writing and actioning their bucket list, well, now is the time to get going on that. And don't wait until it's too late. Help people live a regret-free life rather than a regretful life. And one of the catch cries that I say in the TED talk there is people are dying at 40 and they're being buried at 80. People are dying at 40 and being buried at 80. There's a lot of people just sleepwalking through their life, mate. And you probably know people like that as well. They're living by default, not by design. So I want to help people live more intentionally, so they're happier, and they're not just existing; they're actually living. Because we know that so many, like depression, anxiety, this loneliness epidemic that I mentioned before, the overprescription of antidepressants, suicides, youth suicides, this shit's all going up. Like the statistics are so scary. So I'm trying through this lens of bucket list, and with my coaches now around the world, we're trying to give people real tools based on positive psychology principles that can really help people, be happier and get out and really live more intentionally, live with more happiness, and not just for them, but for their kids. And so they can be a better partner, better leader in their business, better, better everything. And, at the end of the day, I've done this for 10 years and I've seen, I've had so many people where the light's just gone on, the lights just come on, and people have, I've had people come up to me after seminars, mate, and gone, you know what, I've been on suicide watch. I'm going through depression right now. What you said about, I'm not a motivational speaker. I speak very, very fucking bluntly, and I'm really clear on that. And so what I tend to do is wake people up, not to scare the shit out of them, although that might be the effect. I'm not, and by the way, I'm not telling them how they should, must, need to, have to live their life. It's just, here's another perspective. Try it on. Get back to me. And a lot of people have got back to me over the last 10 years of doing this, whether I'm speaking from a stage, a TEDx talk, or whatever, or coaching. And it really, these tools have really, helped people, live with more purpose, which is what it's all about.
When you talk about living with more purpose, is it more for them as an individual to not regret not doing something, or maybe look at what can you do to grow as a person?
Both. People are so busy being busy. It's like this weird fucked up badge of honor that we wear around. Oh, how are you, mate? Yeah, I'm so busy. What are you, bragging or complaining? Like people are so busy being busy that they're busy on their to-do list, but not on their bucket list until something traumatic or dramatic happens to them or a loved one, or they get given a use-by date. Let's be honest. And people who are more my age, over 40, they need that wake up. I'm sorry, but they need that midlife awakening rather than a midlife crisis. And it's funny because we're so busy on our to-do list that we forget about our bucket list. But it's funny when people have, and I've seen so many examples, when people who get given a use-by date or something traumatic happens to them, or someone close to them, suddenly people become infinitely resourceful. Suddenly they switch, they pivot on their priorities, and suddenly their bucket list becomes of utmost importance. Or the things that they want to do for themselves, with their families, etc. And this is just an opportunity. When I hang out with people, it's just an opportunity for people to put their own oxygen mask on first, so they can go and help others. It's a self-leadership lesson, right? And it has a massive ripple effect into every other area of your life. It's not just about a bucket list. It's really about how a person reverse engineers every aspect of their life in order to make this stuff come to fruition. It's the growth of them on this journey towards a destination, these predetermined destinations or self-imposed destinations. But more importantly, Alex, it's about the person that exists on the other side, the person that we don't know yet, right? You have no fucking idea what you can truly do in this life, right? You have no idea. I don't. But the thing is, people give up on experimenting or pushing those boundaries, and it fucking shits me. It depresses me that people give up. I think the human experience is experiencing as much as you possibly can while you're here. I don't know. We can get into a talk about afterlife and all that bullshit, but at the end of the day, I don't know. Let's have a fair dinkum, as we say in Australia, fair dinkum crack at this thing. Get curious about your potential. Get curious about what else you can do, not just about the travel, all the different skills of the people that you want to meet, the challenges that you can set for yourself, the different things that go out and be curious. That's what it's about.
I just had a conversation with my boss about this whole thing. Like, we were talking about maybe we're struggling finding things to do in the job, or maybe not being able to showcase our skills as much as we want to. And she mentioned something where, like, I'm at that age where I can go out and do something else. I'm young enough, and I don't need to stay somewhere and feel comfortable. You kind of have to go out there, experiment, and find something new, challenge yourself, find the next step in your goal that you're wanting to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows what you're saying, where you just don't want to be comfortable. You want to kind of go out there and find what's new, what's something new you can accomplish. And like bucket list style, what's something that you want to try? What's something that you're kind of scared of, but you know that you eventually want to do it. And I love the whole concept of the bucket list, is because it can mean anything. But
yeah, look, but that being said, people, human beings, one of their greatest needs is certainty. People need a degree of certainty in their life, right? If you're out there and it's very uncertain, it's scary as hell. Right. So we need some sort of system, routine, habit in our daily life to keep us sane. But if it's mundane, if you're not enjoying it, well, what's the fucking use?
Yeah.
So I think it's not up to you and I to predetermine that for people. People have got to get that happy balance themselves around certainty and uncertainty, and that is very different for different people. But when we go into, like, we do programs within big businesses. We do programs now for families to Fortune 500 companies and everyone in between. And when we go into companies and we've got this really cool program called the Bucket List Life Plan, and it's really about helping teams and staff and companies all come together, do bucket list things together. But more important, it's about helping them get engaged in life. I say a bucket list is a tangible life plan, where our career plan or our business plan should fit into our life plan and not be the other way around. So really bringing home that work to live principle, right? And our jobs or our business careers should do two things and two things only: spit out the cash flow and also spit out the time flow to allow us to go and do the things that we truly want to do, right? Double bonus if you actually like what you do, which 87% of Americans don't actually like what they do. They're what they call disengaged. There's 87% of people who go to work in America right now, probably even worse now, who don't like what they do, who are just waiting till someday, the perfect time, waiting for the 401k to maybe kick in later on. I'm going to sacrifice my happiness now for the large majority of my life to enjoy later. And sometimes that later never comes, you know, or it comes way too soon. And so that is super depressing to me, that people don't make those choices early on. And, you know, I think, but I think optimistically that people are making those choices to go towards happiness, because in the average lifetime of an average employee, people change their jobs about 14, 15 times in their working career now, versus 10 years ago, it was only 7 times.
Wow. That's an interesting fact right there. When you're working with these companies, the Fortune 500 companies or families, what's something that is rewarding to you when you're working with them?
I get sent, it's a good question. I get sent, you know, videos, photos, or tagged on social media of families living their bucket list, and they tag me in, you know, like it might be years later, going, "Oh, Trav, because of your seminar back in here we are at Disney World with the whole family, and yep, ticket before you kick it." And that's, you know, like, that's awesome. Or Trav, you know, I don't know if you remember me. I get these every week, mate. I don't know if you remember me. I was in your seminar, blah, 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 years ago. And here I am. I've just completed a marathon. Awesome. You know, and thanks a lot for tagging me, you know, like, or I've just completed my first book. I wrote about my story, like you suggested. It really was a really cathartic experience, and as a result, I've just published my first book, and I just want to thank you. That's the shit. That's what it's all about, man.
So like the positive impact that these individuals are making in their life, and like seeing them be happy and knowing that they overcame something and challenged themselves, or wanting to get further in their bucket list, is the most rewarding part for you. Yeah,
and my response is a stock standard, pretty much a stock standard response, whether it be Disney World, whether it be a marathon, whether it be skydiving, whether it be their book. My response is awesome. Thanks so much for tagging me. What's next?
I like that. The what's next is the important part, because it's like you were able to do something now. What's your next goal that you want to accomplish?
Yeah.
During this pandemic time, how has it affected the coaching part? Are you still able to do them, or is it less than what is now, what you were wanting?
No, we're actually reaching more people now than we were pre-COVID. We're doing more programs now, more than ever before. We're getting companies and groups coming together going, shit, I just want to, you know, like, trying to maintain a sense of culture in a company is really hard when everyone's working from home. You know, suddenly we're being thrust into this remote work scene, or this remote work environment where everyone's working from home. And you know, we're getting a lot of companies, or a lot of decision makers within companies saying, guys, we just want a positive excuse to bring everyone together online and not talk about work, you know, and these, you know, everyone's recalibrating on what is meaningful to them. Where is their happiness? They're recalibrating on their jobs and their careers and their businesses, and they're innovating too, like never before. Like we had to. We were all running offline programs. Now we're running online as well. They're innovating, adapting, radically collaborating like ever before. I think the concept of work and life has changed forever. But you know, mental health is a massive issue. That's the main reason why we're getting called in at the moment to do programs, you know, to engage their teams, sure, to give them something else to focus on rather than just work. But help them recalibrate on their happiness, help them recalibrate on their true north for that particular person, and hopefully not everyone's coping, during these times, and hopefully these are some tools to be able to help people self-manage.
For someone that's listening to this interview that's probably maybe going through that situation with working with a team and everyone's virtual right now, what's like one piece of advice you would give a team to help them overcome the situation that we're in right
now? Straight up, I would, and I wouldn't recommend anything else. Just get if there's a team, get one of our coaches in to run a program for you, because at the end of the day, it like I'm about to start one tomorrow, right? And we've got coaches in 70. We've got team in 60 countries, and I'm running a program for a team who's in 60, or a company that's in 60 countries, and they're all coming together, and hopefully they can all understand my Australian accent. That's not my problem. But at the end of the day, you need someone outside of that circle to facilitate a program properly. And that's why, learning and development, HR, within the companies, they're outsourcing to us quite regularly to, get a bucket list coach in there to run a bucket list life plan program, 12-hour program, or 12-week, 1 hour a week over 12 weeks. That's what that could look like, where everyone comes together online. Awesome fun. A lot of accountability, and how it really helps people, and it helps the flow on from doing a bucket list into work is crazy good. It's unreal, and it just helps them get more engaged in their own life, and more engaged in their family's life. And it's amazing for culture. It's amazing for teams. It's amazing to see how different levels within a company come together on they match values, so they have these bucket list things in common. Before you know it, companies are doing bucket list things together, and we unpack and unearth all of this stuff during these programs.
So you are a host of a podcast show. What made you want to start that?
I was having too many conversations with interesting people, and I thought I'll record these. Yeah, because I come across them. It's pretty straightforward. Hey, and I'm interested in how people got to where they are, like you, and how their psychology works. So I've talked to some really interesting people. It's got nothing to do with bucket lists, half of them, but I don't care. I just like talking to interesting people. And I tend to get some really out there kind of thought leaders who I'm bonus if I get people on my show that I'm interested in talking to. It's a double bonus if my audience actually likes listening to it too. But so the cool thing about my reach is I've been able to get some really different kind of people on, and it helps me expand my awareness about certain topics. And so I'm excited about expanding it. Like just on my show the other day, I had the founders of Mind Medicine Australia. So they're doing all experimental psychedelic research, and how it affects things like mental health, PTSD, and they've got angel investors and VCs and all this sort of thing to help build Mind Medicine Australia. And they're doing amazing studies right now, and championing that whole psychedelic clinical research to also help people with mental health. And it's just fascinating. it's fascinating. You know, I could have spoken to them for like 5 hours. I'm just sitting there. I forgot all my questions. I'm sitting there just going, tell me about that. How do you do that? And what's the result? And I just like lost complete track of my questions. And I just kept asking questions because I'm just a curious person. It's like I was having coffee with them.
See, that's the best part. And that's why I enjoy doing this show is I love learning from people, and every interview I do, I always learn something new that I can take in my life and see where it goes. And like you said, I could take hours. I know they don't have hours of their time, but each episode I enjoy, and it's a growing experience for me. I mean,
that's it. Yeah.
I love what I do. So what does the future look like for you personally and professionally? What are you wanting to accomplish next?
Well, I'm building out one of my bucket list items right now, and that's my legacy around bucket list coach. And, you know, until I'm 50, I'll be building that. And I'll build it out more and more with more team, more coaches, more programs, helping more people around the world. We've got our mission. Our mission is to help 10 million bucket listers live purposely fulfilled lives. So we're not even close. So 10 million, that's our big 10-year goal. So that's what that looks like. And you know, being an entrepreneur, you always got to be building team around you. So it's not just the Trav show, it's all about the brand. So that leverages me to then write more books, do more speeches, do more bucket list adventures around the world, and, you know, come up with more innovative products and services to be able to help more people. And at the end of the day, that helping people is one of my highest values. So if I'm not doing that at like a global level, I don't feel like I'm really contributing. I want to honestly change the narrative around things like mental health and depression.
For someone that's listening to this interview, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome their challenges, accomplish their goals, and rise to their challenge?
Be real with yourself. Like when I say real to you know, be less of a victim, more of a victor, play above the line. And what I mean by that is stop blaming the world and everyone else for your excuse. Stop blaming the world, all right? Stop blaming Trump, stop blaming the Democrats, stop blaming the news, stop blaming everyone else for your lot in life, all right? Just stop it. Stop using excuses. All right, straight up. You know, yep, might have had a shitty childhood growing up, but, you know, okay, enough is enough. Draw the line in the sand. The stories that you've led yourself to believe up until this point in time are just stories. They're not facts. You've put together a different circumstances that have happened in your life, and you put them all together, created a story, put meaning over the top of it, and it's become your identity. That can all be dissolved if you want it to be. So stop using and stop denying there's also a problem. You know, like if there's a problem, like if you've got no money, well, really, you are poor. If you're fat, you're fat. All right. If you're single and you're lonely, just admit it to yourself. Stop denying that you're not. So again, being really real with yourself is of paramount importance. And then flip the script and take full on 100% accountability for your lot in life. Every single decision is yours to own. Be complete, like 100% ownership, 100% accountability to yourself, and 100% responsibility is all on your shoulders. No one else's, not the government's, not your parents, not your partner. Fuck them all. It's all on you. That is the reality that people need to hear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because we're all blaming everyone, you know, like, and by the way, we oscillate between the two. We go from victor to victim, victor to victim. But at the end of the day, it's all on you.
You just have
Right?
to commit to
I've
it.
been helping people. I've been helping people both in the personal training, hundreds of clients, 100,000 clients, and now in this, it's like the biggest thing that shifts people is people's ability to take ownership over their life and over their results. Okay, and then get really clear, and get this stuff out of your head. Actually, write goals down. There's a miracle. Actually write your bucket list down. So you got a 42%, a lot of people don't know this, but you got actually a 42% more likelihood of things actually manifesting if you actually just write them down. Now, remember that thing called pen and paper? Interesting concept, I know. But if you actually write stuff down, get it out of your head and separate it from your daily to-do list, you'll find that things manifest a hell of a lot faster. Statistically, you're already halfway there. So you might as well take time out of your life. When you decide to stop blaming the world and everyone else and using excuses, denying there's a problem, take full-on accountability, ownership, and responsibility for your lot in life, then get busy. Get a piece of paper, write down what you want, and start with the baby steps.
I totally agree with the writing it down. I mean, I write everything because I'm a person, if I don't write, I'm going to forget about it. And I have a goal list going. Like, what do I want to accomplish in the next year, in the next 5 years? What's some bucket list items I have? And it kind of keeps me motivated. I look at it every day when I'm at work, and it keeps me going in the right direction that I want to.
The other thing on that, Alex, is also once you've written down your goals, is look at the fastest way to achieve it, right? Like, how can you straight line it? And rather than go like this, one of the hardest things to say, if you're in business for yourself, is one of the hardest things to say is this. It's really, you might want to write this down, kids. It's this statement. A lot of people really struggle to say. I'm being so sarcastic now. Can you please help me? Oh my God. If people just drop their fucking ego for a second and then ask people for help, miracles happen.
Yep. I think people just I think people are afraid to ask for help and they just want to do it themselves, but they have a hard time possibly getting to where they want if they don't ask.
Successful people, I know this very well, but successful people get out of their own way, drop their ego, and ask for help.
Yep. I mean, the top CEOs nowadays, they had to ask someone to get to where they are today. So
you can't build it. You can't build a brand. You can't build you just got to ask for help. You got to get good people around you.
Yep. Well, Trav, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly enjoyed hearing about your rise to the challenge, and we're all excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Pleasure, bro. Thanks heaps for having me on your show.